Greetings. Tony from Old River Hardgoods again. Well, the music you're listening to is Angel's March from my fourth CD, Eternity Bridge, and as always, the links to the full version and a video I made a bunch of years back while I still had my beard down there in the description. And today's video is going to be done a little differently. We're going to be taking a look through the archives, and I'm talking about these are tools that I sold before I got here on YouTube, and I'm sure some of you folks have seen a few of these before, but some of these you may not have seen. So, as always, sit back and enjoy. Well, the first tool we're going to take a look at is a brace that was patented by Clemens B. Rose of Sunderland, Massachusetts on April 16th, 1867. It was patent number 63944. These were made by Miller Falls, or made and sold by Miller Falls, as well as by Rose himself, from 1868 until 1878. And they are somewhat uncommon, not overly rare, but finding a good one is hard to do. One of the unique features is the grip. The wood gripper there in the center is fixed and does not rotate. I've seen people try to make them rotate, but they were made to stay in one spot. The pad, on the other hand, should turn. And cleaned up and working, these are nice braces. It's kind of a neat chuck idea. Of course, a lot of these older braces, that's what the game was finding better mousetraps, so to speak, with the chucks. Moving on to another patented brace. This one was patented by Greenleaf Stackpole. Imagine naming your kid Greenleaf these days. Anyways, he was out of Portland, Maine, and was granted patent number 36538 on September 23rd, 1862 for the design of this one. And of course it's got kind of a unique chuck to it. And these are pretty rare. They just don't show up too often. Stackpole never hooked up with any of the big boys, and I don't have any information on how long he was in business, although he did have several other patents as well. Again, these are just two examples of really, really good collectible old tools. Okay, moving on to chisels. We'll take a look at a couple of early gouges. First one is by Joseph Mitchell of Sheffield, England. He's listed in the 1787 Gales Directory as an edge tool maker. And you can tell this is an 18th century tool by the rounded shoulders as the blade transitions towards the shaft and then down towards the tang. He's a pretty uncommon maker. You just don't find too many by him. I think this was the only one I've ever had. I've had a few Shaws, who's another one listed in there. And the next one up, of course, is a Newbold. And the Samuel Newbolls also first shows up in the 1787 Giles directory, but his firm continued until 1901. Again, this one just has the Newbold mark and the rounded shoulders. And you can see the transition on this one between the steel and the wrought iron body. And of course, you'll find plain irons from time to time with the Newbold mark on them. And this one's just another great collectible. And finding good ones ain't happening very often anymore. Next, we're going to take a look at a couple of very uncommon layout tools. First of which is this brass and steel fancy legs or dancing legs caliper. This guy measured 5 3/4 inches long. Didn't have a maker's mark on it. And you see it does have some patina. The steel legs have some pitting. The brass has got a little roughness, but as I remember correctly, the joints all worked. And these guys are not that common. Once in a while you'll find just the basic caliper with the fancy legs, but one that's got the brass uppers and the steel lowers, that's pretty rare, even despite the condition. Next up is a brass and steel divider. This one measured 5 inches long. And what a gorgeous, I'm thinking this was 18th century because of the file work. You look at how the steel transitions, and then there's the brass legs. I mean, this was obviously hand forged, but boy, the craftsmanship, you just don't see that. And again, this was in good shape. The joint was good. The tips were good. Yeah, I cleaned it, but for being 200 plus years old, you're not going to find much better than this. And again, this is a very, very uncommon and hard to find tool. And they aren't cheap, but what are you going to do, right? Okay, next up on our little tour of tools here are hammers. I've talked about Charles Hammond before. Of course, he's well known for his Philadelphia hammer making, but he was born to parents in one of the Shaker communities up in Massachusetts, and he left in his 20s after learning the blacksmithing and tool-making trades. And this is the only that I can remember Hammond Boston marked hammer that I've ever had. Cobbler's hammer. The style is similar to that of the 18th century and the early 19th century ones, with the kind of narrow transition from the eye back to the peen. And you can see what makes this kind of neat is it's got a bolt through the top to keep the head on the handle, similar to what you see in Cooper's adzes. And this one cleaned up pretty nice. I didn't go too crazy on it. You can see the graining of the wrought iron falling back through the peen. Peen's got some roughness. I remember the face had a little roughness, but again, 180-year-old tool, you got to expect a little wear. And these guys are pretty few and far between. I say that a lot, but I do mean it. Another uncommon hammer was a doghead one. This was either a sawmaker's. This style was also used by file makers, but this one was pretty big, if I remember correctly. If you look at the penny for size of the handle and the head, I could dig out the specs, but I'm not going to bother. Anyways, obviously hand forged. The peen has some chipping on the end. Somebody was banging on it. I don't know if it was being hit or whatever, but the face was actually fairly good on this one. Handle was homegrown and hand carved, and again, this is one of them hammers that, I could look at 1,000 hammers and never see another one even close to being like this, and probably make that closer to 5,000 hammers, because this was like one of like maybe 2 or 3 that I've ever had. Next on a journey of hammers was this fancy small joiner's hammer, decorated, possibly 18th century. Got a square face on it. Oh, the handle might have been a replacement. I don't remember. It's been quite a while since I had this guy. But if you note the decorative work on the top of the eye, with the cut marks and the filing and that, and again, few and very far between. And last up on the hammers, another hand-forged hammer, square punched eye, and note the file work all around on this. Now, I don't know if this was 18th century, but if it wasn't, it was pretty close. And it wasn't that big. Looking at the penny there, I want to say it was maybe about 4 inches long or 3.5 inches long, and probably only weighed 1.5 pounds, something to that effect. But actually, it was in pretty good shape after I got the rust and crud off of it. And if you look down on the lower right corner, some of the ding marks there, somebody was actually setting their saw against the side of this thing. I've seen planes with that on. I've seen other hammers with it on. And again, this had a wrought iron body with a steel face and a steel peen. You can see the transition there. And, you know, I could sell hammers like this all day in this kind of condition. Next, we're going to take a look at a couple of rules. First one is, I don't know, it was user crafted or somebody made it, but hand ruled, 6 inches of measuring on it. You can see where the numbers were stamped, and the rulings were all scribed by hand. And note the neat little notches, gouge marks made at the end. Kind of a nice touch. Of course, somebody had to put a hanging hole on it. That was added later, but what are you going to do? The wood was oak. No idea as to the age. I'm guessing probably sometime 19th century, but where in the 19th century is kind of a hard call. I do know it came out of the New York area, upper New York area, so that was about the only thing I had as far as its history. But so it was a pretty neat and pretty collectible rule. Moving on, was this a find? This is a very early folding rule, and I do believe this one was either 18th century or early 19th century. Not in the greatest of shape. The rulings were pretty well worn on it. It was boxwood. You can see the rust there in the joints and the brass joints. Kind of different made, though, if you're familiar with the Stanley rules. How they would open up. This one opened up a little differently. And you can see the joints are splayed, the legs are a little warped, and you can see remnants of the ruling on it. But again, these early rules do not show up very often, and again, they rarely are in any kind of good shape. I know really nice ones bring some serious money. I forget what I got for this one. I didn't bother to look it up, but probably wasn't a ton of money, but still commensurate with the age of the tool. So, anyways, onward and upward. Moving into trades, we have a hand-forged cobbler's or cordwainer's boot peg float. And for those of you who are new to all of this or whatever, for a long time, heels and soles on shoes were pegged into place rather than being stitched or being nailed, because nails would rust and of course the soles and the heels would fall off. they would use little tiny pegs, about a half inch or so long. And the advantage of these, of course, is when the pegs would get wet, they would swell up and attach themselves even tighter. Of course, he needed some way of trimming off the points of the pegs, and this is what this tool was used for. This one, again, I had no idea as to the history of it. I know it came out in New England, but that was about as far as I got with the history. And it was long, if I remember correctly. It was close to 3 foot, like 30 inches or maybe 32 inches, something like that. And all hand forged and just beautifully done. And I won't say it was one of a kind because I'm sure there were a few others out there, but not one of those tools you find every day. And last, when we were talking about old early hand forged tools, was this hand vise. This one I'm fairly certain was 18th century. If you note the bunny ear nut, screw threads which were hand cut, and that style of the joint, I don't know how to describe it, but that's how they made them back in those days. And again, this one was in fair shape. There was some rusting and some pitting, and it was a small one. I mean, 2.5, 3 inches at most. Jaws probably were less than an inch or an inch, but it still was functional. The screw worked, the nut held, at least when I had it. And I kind of remember getting this one from a guy here in PA, but he was quite a character, and he somewhere along the line picked up a huge collection of hand vices, and took me a while to get him out of them because he had everyone priced up in the $1.50 price range. But he was one of those guys that kind of learned that the bigger the pile, the cheaper he got. You know, if I pick up one piece, he'd say $25 or $30. And if I picked up 10 pieces, he'd look at the pile and go, oh, I don't know, 30, 35 bucks. And off we went. So anyways, but he's now long gone. Well, I miss him. He was quite the character. Moving on. Now, these aren't quite rare, but it's getting harder to find good ones. And this would be hand-forged trammel chains. And well, a tool, it's a fireplace tool. And of course, these were used for suspending pots and kettles over the old open hearth fireplaces, as well as outdoors, or using a tripod. Longer ones they use with the scalding kettles and the big butcher's kettles. And notice the pot hook. It's got that flat hook that went into the bail of the pot or the kettle, and then the sharper hook was used to shorten the chain. You'd hook in one of the links of the chain. Of course, the bigger hook at the end would go over the bar. And this was a smaller one. You note the scroll end on the pot hook and the whatever. This one was, the chain was only about 14, 15 inches. But this was a nice one. I see them from time to time. I haven't been buying them too often. And, well, somebody's dinging me on Facebook, but I thought I had that all turned off. But it's coming through the phone, so just ignore it. But anyways, you know, if I see them around, I might still pick them up from time to time. But anyways, that's pretty much it for this segment. Now we're going to go on to the This Week at the Flea Market, which is actually 2 weekends at the flea market, but I figured I'd give you a look anyway. So on we go. Well, what started off as a quiet day at the flea market got busy pretty quick. One of my regulars finally turned up with some tools, and this is the first part of what I got. So here we go. Jennings and Griffith. 3/4 inch firmer, not too bad a shape. A.W. Butcher. 2 inch or 2 1/4 inch plain iron. I don't think this one was ever used. I've mentioned this in the past. That once in a while you still find them and they're still out there and used. This is a K&E sight level in the original case. Looks to be good. A hand-forged slag chipping hammer. Nobody seems to want them, but I still buy them anyways. A Stanley Everlast 1/4-inch chisel, not in too bad a shape. Still got some blade left to it. I've been seeing them where they're down to here, and I've been leaving them in the boxes. This is a Shoalhorn, yeah, Shoalhorn pliers. It'll clean up okay. A Tainter patented saw set. That one should clean up all right. This is part of a gun sight. I forget who or what this is for, but it's just kind of neat and wasn't that much expensive. Another saw set. At least it's got the fence. I forget who make that one, but we'll figure it out. This is a Jordan, Germany, aluminum folding rule. Need to wipe it over with the cleaning stuff quick. And this big, funky, user-made Fro. Not sure what to make of this guy. You know, it's welded. He's got it pinned to the handle, and the handle looks like it's glued on, so I don't know. I think that handle is there for the duration. Going to be a bear to ship, but I just could not pass that one up. So, this is the first part. Stay tuned for round 2. And round 2. There is a plum riveting hammer. Needs a lot of cleaning. A CS Osborne magnetic tack hammer. Not too bad a shape. 2-pound ball peen hammer. Looks to be hand forged. A bit on the rough side, and the handle's definitely going to get lost. Oh, this one just called to me. It's a little tack hammer. It's obviously been well used. Shown a lot of love, but hand forged slate hammer. Different. A hand forged draw knife. Another slate hammer. Handle's kind of on the rough side, but yeah, make something out of it. A Miller Falls number 900 smoothing plane when I get tired of cussing with the Stanleys. These are different. I don't know, some sort of tongs, spring loaded, and it's got some welding splash on it, so might have been used in a welding shop. This one I'll get some comments on. I always call this Bakelite. Somebody said it's something else, but it's some kind of composite material for the head, and it looks like it's got some glue or something holding it on, but I don't know. I thought it was neat. Another little hand-forged hammer. Don't see a name on it, but I'm sure we can stamp something. And yet another Ferris buttress. The handle's kind of rough on this one, but maybe we'll put like 4 or 5 of them together and call it an instant collection on eBay and let it sit there for 3 years before it sells. Anyways, not too bad a pickings for a rainy Sunday in December. Well, it was another 45-degree morning at the flea market. Of course, there's a threat of a whole bunch of rain coming in, starting this afternoon and into tomorrow. So that kind of kept the number of dealers down, but I managed to score a few things. And here we have a hand-forged pickhead. Somebody kind of power washed this guy and sprayed it with the shiny stuff, so I'm going to have to unclean that. A 3/4-inch firmer chisel. It's got some gunk on it, and the socket needs some work. This is neat. Big hand-forged chisel from a rasp. I mean, look at the teeth on that. It's going to take some cleaning, but we'll get that guy looking right. A 1/2-inch rosewood handle carving chisel. Those are English. I forget who made them, but I've seen them in sets before. An orphan brass drafting divider. A leather belt punch, bigger one, needs some cleaning. A hand-forged, corn husking peg. I can talk. I haven't been up since 4:15, so I'm not exactly firing on all cylinders right this minute. Pretty clean Starrett. Rule 604R satin finish. Paris CT Company pipe clamps. They work. Ain't pretty, they work. This is one of the old oddball Stanley number 25 bevel squares. 10-inch. Doesn't have the brass on it. Kind of think these were made during World War II, if I remember correctly. A really clean Stanley 65 marking gauge. A few little spots on it, but boy, this guy is nice. I'm not going to have to do hardly anything with that one at all. A saw filer with the file. Hope we get the screws working. A neat little plumb 1/4-inch ratchet. I don't much mess with mechanics tools, I've said in the past, but yeah, that was in good shape. Nothing else, I'll keep it here and use it. And a 10-inch Bemis and Call S-wrench. Pretty good shape. My hand's got a little squeeze to it, but yeah, this got to clean up real nice. And hey, again, nobody wants it. I'll use it. So, not a great pile, but better than no pile. Well, that's all for this one, folks. I hope you enjoyed my little presentation. I hope you learned something. And I'm wishing everybody out there in YouTube land a safe and happy holiday season. And if you like what you're seeing, please hit that subscribe button to be notified when new videos are posted. Thanks for watching, and bye.